This is not a one and done system. This is not a flip the light switch on and everything changes. It's a muscle that we build and develop and use over and over and over again in our life. And that is the real work. It's not perfection, not control, but returning to yourself again and again. And that is really what this episode is about. Every pattern has a pull, but every pull can have a pause, even if it's just for a second. And that is your window. In that tiny space between impulse and action, your conscious adult gets to choose again. Welcome to Grow with Robin Breckenridge, a podcast about stepping into the most fully expressed, aligned, and conscious version of yourself. Here, we dive into the real work of personal growth, establishing boundaries, understanding your patterns, building self-trust, healing emotional wounds, and creating relationships that feel safe, authentic, and fulfilling. I'm Robin, a life and relationship coach, and in each episode, we'll explore the tools, insights, and conversations that will help you not just improve your life and relationships, but truly transform them. You don't have to just go through it. Let's grow through it. And let's do it together. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Grow with Robin Breckenridge. I think that we have all experienced this. The magnetic pull towards something you know doesn't serve you. Maybe it's the text you shouldn't send, the boundary you keep putting off, the dynamic you swore you would never repeat again. That voice that whispers, maybe this time, maybe just one more time, maybe it'll be different. That's the pull of your patterning. It's not weakness, it's wiring. It's your nervous system's way of trying to complete a story that never got resolved. The patterns that pull us, I know you guys have been listening, they're not random. They're rooted in familiarity. Your nervous system doesn't crave good or healthy. It craves what's known. So even when something feels painful, if it feels familiar, it's still safer than the unknown. That's why we end up back in the same emotional dynamics. Different face, same energy, same pattern. It's why you might find yourself overgiving to people who don't reciprocate or tolerating behaviors that don't match your values. It's your nervous system saying, oh, I know this terrain. I've survived this before. Maybe this time it will be different. It's also saying, I know I'll survive it again. But survival is not the same as safety. And none of you listening came here to help you execute survival mode better. And familiarity without changed behavior or without a healthier container, it's just re-traumatizing. It's not a corrective experience. So our work today, it's not to hate the patterns. It's to understand what that pattern was trying to give you. And to learn how to meet that need in a way that is actually healing, not re-traumatizing. And when you start doing it differently, your nervous system might panic. Peace might feel foreign. Consistency might feel boring. But that's the moment of healing when you realize the new behavior is not the threat. It's the discomfort of doing something different. So we are concluding this series on parts of self. Don't worry. We're still going to talk about it. But in a formal sense, we've kind of covered the parts of self. We've met your inner child, maybe the one who needed love and was really the most powerless part of your journey. We've met your inner teenager, the one who signed up to protect that inner child. And for some of us, had some fire backing it up. You've met your maladaptive adult, the one who kept all of it running, but had the resources of the child and teen. And each part of self developed patterns of survival. Maybe your inner child was a people pleaser. Maybe your inner teenager rebelled. Maybe your maladaptive adult shuts down or overfunctions. And when you get activated and that default setting kicks in, it's usually because one of those parts has grabbed the wheel. And sometimes you don't even notice it's happening. You black out in that part. And suddenly you're reacting from an old survival pattern. And that is why awareness is the first step to change. And it is so powerful. When you can name which part of self is activated and bring your conscious adult back online, you can stop time traveling into the past and start leading from a more resourced present part of you. So this is the illogical part. Your inner child and your inner teen will often keep going back to the same energies and situations that hurt them. And it's not because they want to get hurt over and over and over again, but because they're trying to create a corrective experience. Somewhere deep down in those unconscious parts of self, they're still hoping that if they knock on that same door one more time, maybe this time what's behind it will be different. Maybe this time someone will stay. Maybe this time you'll be chosen. Maybe this time it won't end in pain. The impulse, it's innocent. It's the nervous system's way of reaching for resolution, for the safety and repair they never got. But back then, we had fewer resources. We didn't have language for what was happening. We couldn't regulate or advocate. So the child and teen learn to survive by repeating. But here's the good news. Now, as adults, as conscious adults, we can bring consciousness to that cycle. And instead of sourcing that corrective experience from a place of unconsciousness, we can source it from a place of awareness. We become the one who creates the new ending. And you will shift in and out of these parts of self and your patterning. You're supposed to. It's part of this human experience we're having. But consciousness doesn't make you immune to falling down. It helps you dust yourself off and get back up faster. Healing and being human are not straight lines. It's not a linear experience. They're spirals. You will revisit the same lessons again and again, but each time from a higher level of awareness. What matters most isn't that you never fall down. It's that you return, that you come back to the conscious, grounded, relational part of you who knows how to lead the rest of the way home. And guess what? That's the real work here. This is not a one and done system. This is not a flip the light switch on and everything changes. It's a muscle that we build and develop and use over and over and over again in our life. And that is the real work. It's not perfection, not control, but returning to yourself again and again. And that is really what this episode is about. Every pattern has a pull, but every pull can have a pause, even if it's just for a second. And that is your window. In that tiny space between impulse and action, your conscious adult gets to choose again. You can ask yourself, who's behind the wheel right now? What am I hoping this pattern will give me? And what would doing it differently look like? And that's where tools like AVPS come in. In the last episode, I introduced AVPS as a tool for emotional attunement. So if you've been following this series, you already heard about it, but it's worth hearing again. Because emotional attunement isn't something we learn once, it's something we practice over and over again until it becomes a default within us. So as a recap, AVPS stands for Acknowledge, Validate, Permit, Support. It's the framework that helps you meet what's happening inside with the same presence and care you'd offer someone you love. It is a beautiful way to meet you where you are, not where you want to be. When you feel that familiar pull towards a pattern, the urge to text, fix, chase, shut down, pause and use AVPS anytime you're activated. Here's some examples. The acknowledge part, the A. I feel lonely right now. I feel rejected. I feel unsafe. The validate, which if you listened last week, you already know this, my favorite part. And it starts with, of course you feel ... So some examples. Of course you feel blank. This feeling is old, or something you've been feeling your whole life. Of course you want to reach out for something familiar. That's how you learn to soothe growing up. Permit means it's okay to feel this. It makes sense, and I will give myself some space to just be with myself in this emotional experience instead of resisting it, intellectualizing it. This is how I feel. I'm going to give myself a little bit of space to feel it. And that space could be a minute. Support. What can I do that actually supports this feeling instead of escaping from it or repeating the same patterns? Maybe that's calling a friend. Maybe that's taking a walk. Maybe that's putting your phone in the other room instead of texting. Maybe that's blocking someone. Maybe that's having a boundary. The list is infinite. So many options. Sometimes I think of feelings as waves, like a whoosh that happens to us. But those waves, they can pass. And when it does, you'll find that something in you feels a little freer, a little more connected to self, and probably a lot more esteemable. Every hard thing I have done, there is a point, sometimes directly after, sometimes, I don't know, days after, weeks after, wherever, when I go, holy shit, I can't believe I did that. And that's my way of acknowledging I am way more powerful than I give myself credit for, or that my fear gives myself credit for. And that esteem comes from not abandoning yourself. Resisting the impulse to abandon yourself is an esteemable action. Some patterns feel like they have gravity. That's how trauma repetition works. It's energetic muscle memory. There's an amazing book called The Body Keeps the Score. And there's a story in the book where someone was a war veteran. They were home from the war and they were walking down the street and a car backfired. And before their brain even came online, the person had already taken their girlfriend and themselves and thrown themselves under a parked car. Because that body remembered before the brain did. That's what's happening when we have implicit or default reactions in us. Our body is remembering before our logic is even a part of it. But every time you resist the pull with awareness instead of shame, you get data that you are more powerful than some of these challenging feelings that have had you in a chokehold your whole life. Remember, the goal isn't to never feel the pull. It's to learn how to stay rooted in yourself when it happens. So if you can catch yourself in a familiar cycle, whether before, during, or after, you don't have to spiral into self-blame. Blame doesn't help anybody. You can pause, name it, and say to yourself, oh, I know this pattern. And now, because I can see it, I can choose how I want to interact with it. Or if it's after the fact, I can choose how I want to interact with it next time it comes up. And that's how cycles end. Not all at once, but one conscious action at a time. You have the power to interrupt what once felt inevitable. You are not at war with your patterns. You're in a relationship with them. In fact, I'm really grateful for some of those patterns. And some of those patterns caused me a lot of shame in my journey. But I'm grateful for them because at one point in time in my life, they were probably one of the best things I had on board. The pull for some of these patterns will feel strong at first, but so will your awareness. And every time you choose presence over trauma responses, the pattern isn't as powerful, and you regain that power. So repeat this after me if it feels aligned in your body. I can recognize the pull without being consumed by it. I can feel the urge and still choose differently. I am not my patterns. I am the one who is aware of them. I can fall down, dust off, and get back up and make every single thing that happens in my life purpose-driven. So this is our work this week. Not about being perfect, not about being in control, but being present to yourself. Choosing alignment over repetition. This is how you step out of the pull of a pattern and back into your power. So on that note, the holidays are coming up. We know what that means. It's going to be lovely. Also could be pretty complicated for some of us. So next week, we're going to go back to boundaries a little bit. And let's reconnect with some really great boundary tools for the holidays. Thank you so much for being here. It really means a lot. And I really hope that you are getting something out of this work and something out of every episode. That's my main intention here. So thank you for co-creating with me. Thank you for being brave enough to listen to this podcast and brave enough to either contemplate putting it into action or putting it into action. Let's gear up for the holidays. See you next time. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for being here and for doing this work. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Come connect with me over on TikTok at Robin Breckenridge or Instagram at Coach with Robin, where I share even more insights, tools, and conversations around boundaries, self-trust, relational healing, and so much more. And just a quick reminder, this podcast is for educational and personal growth purposes only. The insights and tools I share are based on my experience as a life and relationship coach and are meant for general guidance. Each person's story is unique, and the nuances of individual experiences can't always be addressed in this format. What's shared here may not be applicable to every situation, especially those involving abuse, oppression, severe mental illness, or systematic harm. If you or someone you know is in crisis, please seek support from a qualified mental health professional or emergency resources. Thank you for listening and for showing up for yourself in this way. Take care, and I'll see you next time.